In a historic first, the 48th annual March for Life, scheduled for January 29th in Washington, D.C., will now be virtual. In a statement, the March for Life says, quote, "In light of the fact that we are in the midst of a pandemic which may be peaking, and in view of the heightened pressures that law enforcement officers and others are currently facing in and around the Capitol, this year's March for Life will look different. The annual rally will take place virtually, and we are asking all participants to stay home and to join the march virtually. We will invite a small group of pro-life leaders from across the country to march in Washington, D.C. this year." Joining us now via Skype to explain all the details into this decision and what a virtual March for Life will mean is Jeannie Mancini, the president of the March for Life. Jeannie, welcome. How did the March for Life ultimately come to this decision? The announcement was made just 2 weeks before the march was set to take place.
Very painstakingly and very carefully. So we were not anticipating doing a virtual march or a virtual rally, I should say. And we've got a fantastic board, but there were a number of things over the course of the last few weeks that began to lead us to ask the question. And over the course of 3 or 4 days, the board very intensely, for lack of better words, really tried to listen to God's voice, to discern the right thing, and to make a choice, knowing it would be a huge disappointment for us, knowing that we had worked all year long for this event for marchers, knowing how important it is with the new pro-abortion Biden-Harris administration, and yet believing that it was the right thing to do.
Can you explain the logistics of how a virtual March for Life will work? How do pro-lifers participate in that virtual rally?
So the rally itself will be online. Check us out at marchforlife.org or watch EWTN during that time to watch the march. And the rally will be essentially pre-recorded, but we've got the phenomenal lineup of speakers that we had promised for you. So it will be ready to go and available at noon. It will begin at noon on January 29th. It'll go for about an hour. I think it'll be a really engaging, inspiring rally. And then stay tuned, keep watching EWTN and the March for Life website to see live the very small 48th annual March for Life represented by pro-life leaders.
Jeannie, you hit on this yourself already. There are pro-lifers who are disappointed, who say there have been other marches this past year. We needed the March for Life to show how much of a priority it is to end abortion, especially with Joe Biden now president. What is your message to pro-lifers disappointed with the decision to make the march virtual?
We share your disappointment, and I would just encourage you to channel that energy in the most positive kind of way. We are at a crossroads in our culture. Look, in a million years, I never would have thought that for 2 months over the past year, I wouldn't be able to receive the Eucharist, either daily or even at Sunday Mass, that we'd be told to stay home, that there would be these lockdowns. I never would have thought that some of the violence that I've seen happen would happen. I really believe we're at a cultural crossroads. And let me share, just living right outside of Washington, D.C., that it is like a war zone there right now. We've got over 25,000 troops, armed troops in Washington, D.C. For perspective, that's more than Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria combined right now. So fencing everywhere, road closures, etc. It's like going to a communist developing country right now. And so believe me when I say that this was a very difficult decision for the board, but please also trust that it was made with the best interest of the marchers at heart, and to take all of that disappointment and energy and to channel it, because folks, we need your efforts to build a culture of life more than ever before. It might look a little different this year, but we're just reminded this is a spiritual battle. Pray, fast, go do things in your local community. God has this, but we are at a crossroads.
Absolutely. Jeannie, we only have a minute left, but what do you envision for the procession with the pro-life leaders? Do you foresee that having more of a somber, reverent tone than that typical joyful, cheering crowds that usually define the March for Life?
I do. It'll be a very small group of leaders. And of course, we could never adequately reflect all of the different wonderful pro-life groups around the country. So I'm not trying to say that it's that. It's just a group who's in some ways just reflecting the majority of Americans who are pro-life. And they'll be very somber, very prayerful as we march together with our masks on, socially distanced, and with, on our shoulders symbolically carrying all of the marchers everywhere with us.
Jeannie Mancini, president of the March for Life, be assured of our prayers this next week.
Thank you, Catherine. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jeannie. And of course, we will have complete televised coverage of the March for Life right here on EWTN. That's on Friday, January 29th, and I will be able to bring you inside access into the day's events.